Have you ever stopped in your tracks while performing a task at work and wondered, wait, how did I end up having to do this every week or every month? Like, how did this end up being part of my job? There are certain tasks that eat away at our sense of accomplishment, at our sense of purpose, and even erode our sense of autonomy. Well, according to the 2024 Canadian Institute of Health Information survey, 50% of physicians and a whopping 93% of nurses reported being burnt out, and organizations reported that burnout was a key factor towards retention of staff. Now, this also applies to other professionals. 80% of pharmacists reported being burnt out and considering or making plans to find another job. If we're not acquainted, I am Chipo, and as a retail pharmacist, I had this feeling of, why am I doing this? Every time I had to pick boxes off the shelf, look at the expiry dates, and remove the boxes that weren't expired throughout the whole stock in the pharmacy. I'm telling you right now, the Canadian Institute of Healthcare also reported that 15% of healthcare professionals are leaving their job to go back to school. Yes, to go back to school. This is definitely a career pivot where people have sensed misalignment and are now upgrading their education, doing what they need to do to find that alignment. Up to 12% left their job because of dissatisfaction and other reasons. But God does not hide purpose inside of us to frustrate us. You know, there's a verse I love in Genesis that says, "And God blessed them and said unto them, Be fruitful and multiply, replenish the earth and subdue it." And what stood out to me there is that God likens us to trees that are capable of bearing fruit. That only happens in the right conditions, of course. A tree or a seed has to be planted in fertile soil, and then the growth happens beneath the surface first. That seed or tree germinates, begins to grow a root system, and becomes anchored in the ground before it can shoot up above the ground and begin to be capable of bearing fruit. But what that means is also that trees have an innate ability to bear fruit. When God says bear fruit, it's because He has already hidden that innate ability inside of us to bear a certain kind of fruit, the gifts and the talents that He's put into each individual. And so when a tree does finally shoot up and bear those fruit, you never see the tree eating of its own fruit, but the fruit that a tree bears is a gift to those around it. And when I put all this together, it means that when I am fruitful, I am using my innate gifts and talents to serve those around me. And that's a gift to those around us. And when a tree serves those around it, we take time to cultivate it, to give it manure, to give it water, to give it the things that it needs to grow, because it serves us. And so that means that when I am planted in a place where I'm bearing fruit and serving those around me, then it comes with provision, it comes with prosperity, it comes with, because I'm adding value, I don't have to struggle to maintain myself. And so really, purpose is buried inside of us. Instead of looking outside of us for purpose, we can look within and be able to spend that quiet time with God or quiet time with ourselves and begin to discover what it is that we were put on this earth to do. So it may well be that at 18, medicine, pharmacy, dentistry was the noble career to take. It was the safest way to make uncertainty disappear. Maybe a teacher, a parent, a trusted guardian advised you to take this career that would lead to financial security over the years and job security, and that is also not a terrible thing to do. For us multi-passionates and multi-talented, it's easier for us to learn things So you find that you can be good at sciencey, you can put on your sciencey brain, you can put on your arty-farty brain, and you're able to fit into all these areas. And in that way, it also then becomes so much easier to get confused and to wonder, where is my calling? Where is my gifting? And to get misaligned. And that is why many times in many conversations that I've had in the past, I've noticed that as healthcare professionals, we have a lot of people that ended up being misaligned because that was the noble career that our families or communities expected us to engage in. And while we are there, maybe 5 or 10 years in, we then realize that that's the profession that's boxing us in. That's the profession that's killing our creative side, that's dying to be expressed. And we become resentful of a life that looks impressive on the outside, but is really suffocating a part of us that wants to be seen and heard. And so those who see you on the outside may wonder. They see how successful, how organized, how passionate you are about helping others within the medical field. But what they don't see is really that struggle with your creative side that wants to be expressed. And you long to break free from that. You long to break free from the stereotypical title, versus alignment. And so really this place, Purpose Beyond Burnout, is a space where we can talk about burnout manifesting itself in times when we are misaligned with purpose, and how we can reconnect the alignment using the degree that we have. Because I don't believe that anything that happens in our life is a mistake. Everything happens for us. So even getting these medical degrees and serving in the way that we've been serving has grown us, has given us these gifts and talents that we can now use and transfer into pivoting our career. Maybe it's a different position within the healthcare, different specialty, different department. As you noticed, 15% of people are going back to school. So maybe specializing in the area that you feel gifted in. I always say to healthcare professionals, when you walk into a room, what is the first thing that comes natural to you? If you see 10 nurses walking into the same patient's room, you'll find that some are so good at the relationship. Some are so good at looking at a chart and then looking at what's missing, what could be missing, what needs to be done. Some are so good at talking to the family and encouraging people. So what is your star? What is it that shines the most in the work that you're doing? And those are the signs that really lead us to say, I can lean more into these tasks, the tasks that bring life to me and that bring life to the people that are around me, versus the tasks that drain me and cause me to give a less quality service because I'm so drained from these tasks. And so for me, it was always being inside the dispensary, breaking free from this prison that is the dispensary or the ER, and seeing the sun, if that, just at a glimpse, starting work before sunrise and completing work after the sun has set. And so we probably lack vitamin D, but that is part of the job, spending those 10, 12 hours within that space and longing to be able to take a lunch break or just see the sun. And it tends to be that the work that was so meaningful to us, the work that we were so privileged to be able to serve other people, it tends to be misaligned because of corporate values that are misaligned with serving patients. And for example, healthcare systems talk about documentation and risk mitigation and all these shortened visits that replace meaning, electronic documentation that consumes the time that we would have used for clinical reasoning, productivity metrics that eclipse patient-centered outcomes. So when we do notice those misalignments with our own personal values and what we wanted to achieve through our career versus the corporate values and the corporate politics, then that begins to cause internal turmoil. But also, we begin to notice that there are sides of ourselves that are not being expressed. And even though you try to convince yourself that it would be reckless to want something else, that people look at you from the outside and really want to have your degree and your titles, but you want to pivot. You don't feel like pivoting is a waste of your degree and would make the people who are proud of you disappointed. But actually, it calls us out, us medics who realize that your degree serves as a valuable asset in your pivot. It serves as a valuable input when you begin to realign into a different role, into a different business, into a different invention. That sometimes that calling, that knowing, that nagging inside of your soul is calling you to something higher than maybe serving at this level. And there is a higher level that we can serve at. And I believe that we always need to listen to that voice when it speaks to us, when it calls us to higher. And so we need to stop confusing endurance with integrity. We need to understand that burnout is a grief of who we could have become or who we wanted to become. It is an occupational hazard, and it is consistent workplace stress. And so if it is consistent workplace stress, that stress has a source that is really hitting misalignment within our being, within our bodies. And so staying out of fear is not the same as choosing out of conviction. If you are choosing out of conviction, this is not for you, doctor, nurse, surgeon, who absolutely can handle those knowing tasks because you know that you were called to serve as a doctor or a nurse. And we salute you and we celebrate the fact that you heeded your calling and you are there serving at your best, and you don't see yourself anywhere else but where you are right now, and you're finding that fulfillment. God has placed it in your heart. It is also to you who maybe are not in the medical profession, and yet you know there's a calling upon you to go into medicine, into nursing, to become a physiotherapist. The other day I was talking to a colleague in his 50s who knew that he wanted to study medicine, and he had been in hospital for a long time with his mom, and the more he was in hospital, he felt like he really wanted to go into medicine. It may sound crazy, but I said, if this is really what you think, he's a top executive, so he probably knows to do the research to see if the tasks align with the tasks that he would want to align with. But I totally encouraged him to explore that further and to see if that was a good fit, if that was something he was called to, because he could still get a good 20 years serving in that profession that he feels really called to do. And so God has placed those innate gifts and talents inside of us. And when we tap into them, when we grow them, when we develop them, and then when we deploy them to actually serve other people who are waiting to hear from us, that is when we find fulfillment, we find impact, we find prosperity. It is absolutely the best thing that we can do for ourselves, the best self-development, self-love, self-care. Instead of being successful on paper but misaligned in practice, this is the space where we explore this, where who we're trained to be versus who we can become. This is really a space where we acknowledge that we've invested so much into getting our degrees, so much time, so much effort, and yet we are still searching for more alignment. So there is more to be uncovered. It's not a one and done learning, you've got your degree, but how can we pivot in a way that will allow us to be more aligned and satisfied? Some people may say you need to be grateful for everything that you have, but it is possible. We don't talk about it enough. That is possible to be grateful and still want more. It is possible to be grateful for the version of you that decided to take this path, and then be grateful for the version of you that's evolving and maybe wanting more, and just embrace that evolution and continue taking steps as we are led to being more aligned. So in this place, we explore who you were trained to be and who you can become. because there are no mistakes in life. So I'm currently reading this book from Edwina Findlay Dickerson. It's called The World is Waiting for You. I'm still early on in the book, but it's amazing how it talks about the God-given desires that we have for our lives, and then the faith that we need to actually begin to pursue those desires, and how life may happen and nothing is a mistake, that there are certain periods of waiting, there are certain periods where we don't understand what's happening, but as long as we are submitted to God and we stay close to God, that those dreams that He has put inside of us, the desires, will actually come to fruition. So I encourage you all to spend more time with God, to just be listening and reading about His purpose and plan for our lives. So I'm not speaking as someone who knows it, who has, achieved, alignment completely, but really I am someone who's walking along this journey from burnout to purpose, to find my purpose beyond the burnout, to walk over the bridge to becoming, as this podcast is called. But somewhere along the way, we made that sensible decision of taking this lucrative medical degree, and then we got the prestige, we got the title, and the respect followed, and the, income stabilized. But from the outside, the story looked complete. Yet on the inside, we know that there's something subtle that says, I want more. There is more for me to do out there. There's more for me to give. There's more for me to become. And so maybe it showed up as burnout. Maybe it showed up as resentment that you really couldn't explain. Maybe it was a numbness that scared you. But there is something that triggers us to look within. And even though we are so grateful for where we are, and we know that other people would really want to be where we are, we understand that everything in God's hands grows. And so we welcome growth. We understand that purpose evolves. And even when we are in our purpose, we cannot sit back and just be grateful. But gratitude does not cancel truth. We are grateful, yes, and then there is also that calling to move higher, as I mentioned. So I deeply believe that God does not place that purpose outside of us and ask us to chase it. Purpose is buried within us. It is those innate gifts and talents that we may maybe take for granted that really we need to tap into, to get quiet, and then to listen to them and not to ignore them. Because sometimes the gifts don't announce themselves. Sometimes they can only reveal themselves when they are in an environment that allows them to breathe. And so, similar to the seed analogy, it has to be planted in fertile soil for it to grow. So we need to put ourselves in environments of growth where we can really cultivate those sparks of talent, those sparks of desire, and see where they lead. It takes trial and error, but that's the exciting part, because we get to learn ourselves more. We get to see what's real and what's not, and what's influenced by people around us, and what was really coming from within us. So the space is for high achievers who have found success in their profession on paper and still feel misaligned in practice, and still feel that there is an adjustment. It might just be a minor adjustment, it may be major adjustment that's required. But we don't hate work, we just don't like the person that we're becoming to survive the work that we're doing currently. And so we're here to talk. We're less about status, not about escaping your life, but really reclaiming your nature and stepping into the best version of ourselves. We don't need to blow up our lives to listen. We don't even need to know what's next. All we need to do is to stop overriding ourselves and listening to ourselves. We want to honor the life that we've built and to joyfully usher in the new era of a career of pivoting, of finding ourselves, of discovering ourselves more and serving more. And that is where we find that fulfillment, that joy, that peace, and aligning with God's plan for our life. So friends, welcome to Purpose Beyond Burnout, our bridge to becoming. It's going to be an exciting ride, and I am so excited that you're here.